Welcome back to the channel, guys, and welcome back to KOENIGSEGG'S DAGBOK, and welcome to episode 10, where we'll be talking about the legendary KOENIGSEGG 1-to-1. And the name itself is self-explanatory to what this beast could do, and the 1-to-1 is reminiscent or refers to the fact that this had a 1-to-1 power to weight ratio, which was literally impossible to achieve, especially in a homologated production car. But KOENIGSEGG, in their own typical fashion, went right ahead and did that. And of course, this thing had the same 5-liter twin-turbocharged V8 taken from the Agera. And as you guys can see, this thing is literally based on an Agera, but completely dialed up to 12 with a complete track optimized kit on it. We'll get to that later on. But it had the same 5-liter twin-turbocharged V8, but this thing was tuned to a whole other level, because this thing put out 1360 horsepower and it generated 1371 Newton meters of torque. And given the fact that this thing had a 1-to-1 power to weight ratio, 1360 horsepower, and this thing weighed in at a curb weight of 1360 kilograms, thereby showcasing its 1-to-1 power to weight ratio, which was literally unseen and unheard of, especially in homologated production cars. But the 1-to-1 was one of the first ever to do it. And of course, only 7 1-to-1s were ever made across its 2-year production run from 2014 to 2015, 6 customer cars and 1 prototype. And of course, this thing looks like a complete track beast on its own, the 2014 Yesco attack, if you will, but nevertheless, it's a complete beast on its own. 1360 horsepower, as I said, 1360 kilograms as the curve weight, a proper legendary and revolutionary thing in the automotive industry, of course. And of course, this thing accelerated from 0 to 62 miles an hour in 2.5 seconds, and it could go from 0 to 400 kilometers an hour in 20 seconds, and it could come back from 400 kilometers an hour and back to a dead stop or not in 10 seconds. And this thing in fact set a couple of records. One of the ones was in fact something that it snatched from its elder brother, i.e. the Agera R, which was the 0 to 300 km an hour and back to not record, which it set all the way back in 2011 at a time of 21.19 seconds. 4 years later in 2015, the 1-to-1 attempted that record and destroyed it with a new time of 17.95 seconds. And this thing is quick and stupidly fast. By stupidly fast, I mean that this thing topped out at 273 miles an hour or 440 kilometers an hour. Wow, even with such a track optimized kit, this thing still put out some massive numbers on paper. And of course, at the top speed of 440 kilometers an hour, this thing could generate 830 kilograms of downforce, which was 30 more kilograms more than a McLaren Senna. Wow, of course, a 2-door diagonal synchro-helix doors, it's a trademark feature. And this thing with that roof scoop on the top still could be completely removed and it could become a convertible. Wow, and this thing, when attempting the 0 to 300 km an hour and back to not record, the driver literally didn't even hold the steering wheel when it accelerated to 186 miles an hour and back to not. And that is due to the meticulously engineered suspension, and that is a double wishbone suspension with carbon fiber rear upper wishbones with electronically adjustable gas hydraulic shock absorbers, which were push rod operated with the triplex damper in the back. And that just shows how they were up in terms of engineering and their craftsmanship, such that the guy literally didn't even have to hold the steering wheel for it to go to 300 kilometers an hour and back to not without swerving in either direction. Wow, that is literally just KOENIGSEGG for you as of right now. And of course, a complete carbon fiber Kevlar reinforced body, of course, 1360 kilograms as the weight. And this thing could in fact run on E85 biofuel or race fuel or normal pump fuel. So this thing had quite a plethora of fuels to choose from to even drive it. So this thing is very out there, quite available as well in its own in terms of the fuel, of course. But this thing, when it was launched, had a huge, humongous price tag of $2.85 million. Wow, and these things are worth way more than double that right now. So wow, that's KOENIGSEGG for you guys. And the 1-to-1 also set the production car lap record at the legendary circuit Spa-Francorchamps, and this thing did it in a practice run. It wasn't an official run without any cars on the track other than the 1-to-1, and there were other cars on the track. But nevertheless, Robert Sawansky, being one of the most talented and skilled drivers out there, took this out on a practice run and unexpectedly set the new record of 2 minutes 32.14 seconds. And they believed that they could in fact improve on it, but due to the decibel limits of the circuit, and given the fact that the 1-to-1 redlined at 8,250 RPMs and screamed more than any other KOENIGSEGG that left angle home at that point, thereby inadvertently black flagged the 1-to-1 and waved it towards the pits, thereby bidding farewell to them, destroying their own record. But nevertheless, it still showed that this thing was a proper track weapon, and they in fact wanted to go to the Nürburgring Nordschleifer and set a record right there as well, but the same issue of the decibel limit showed up and thereby gave the black flag to the 1-to-1. But that doesn't deviate from the fact that this thing was a proper track monster and could in fact set even more better times at Nürburgring, at Spa, of course, and of course this thing could definitely set some phenomenal records, some of the most notable circuits and racetracks all across the world. And of course that massive aerodynamic and track focus kit is one of the most commanding points of this car. That massive front splitter is a proper key to that commanding point. Those massive canards, the hollow carbon fiber wheels, and that rear slope mounted active aero Le Mans inspired wing, of course, with active aero. And this made the 121 to have the first ever mounting point, or i.e. the rear slope mounted rear wing, thereby carried on to more of the further future models, i.e. all the way to the ESCO attack. But nevertheless, a complete carbon fiber kit with, of course, those massive canards are, to be honest, some of the biggest ones you'll ever see. That massive front splitter, carbon fiber louvers of the front and rear wheels, carbon fiber mirrors as well. And the engine was fed to a 7-speed dual clutch transmission with paddle shifters, of course. And the engine weighed in at 197 kilograms, making it one of the most powerful engines, yet one of the most lightweight engines to ever be produced. I mean, 1360 horsepower coming from a 5-liter twin turbocharged V8 that weighed in at under 200 kilograms. Now that is something you won't see, and given the fact that this thing had a 1-to-1 power to weight ratio, that just made it even more legendary and permanently etched its name into the automotive industry. And of course this thing was also the first ever production or homologated car to have 1 megawatt of power, i.e. 1341 horsepower. This thing had 1360 of it, thereby marking the first ever homologated car to have 1 megawatt of power. I mean, this thing has an ongoing list of things that it achieved in terms of records, in terms of speed, in terms of braking, in terms of aerodynamics, downforce, you name it, the 121 has it on its belt. And of course a complete carbon fiber body, as I said, and the power going to the rear wheels, of course, meaning you can literally throw it around the corners and have as much fun as you want. Wow, what do you guys think? I mean, this is literally based on an Agera, so which Agera would you pick? Personally, I was in fact previously a fan, and the main Agera that had the top spot in my list was the Agera FE Vader, because I just love the exposed carbon look. But the 121 has now replaced that, and I want one, I need one. I mean, this is of course a proper $5+ million car. Some are even selling it over 7 mil, so gonna have to rob a bank again. Well, what do you guys think? Would you take a 1-to-1 or a ESCO attack? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, this thing had a weight distribution of 44% to the front and 56% to the rear. And the 1-to-1 obviously also came with the Koenigsegg electronic stability control system with 3 modes, i.e. wet, track and normal. And of course a proper track weapon, only 7 made, guys, a huge price tag, so I'm gonna have to rob a bank ASAP. And of course a complete legendary revolutionary car that permanently etched its name solely due to the fact that this thing had a 1-to-1 power to weight ratio. And this thing was released in a time where other supers and hypers were making their way onto the market and etching their name permanently during literally the time of the 1-to-1, and of course was the same time as the Holy Trinity, i.e. the LaFerrari, the P1 and the 918, but the Agera on their own were literally smoking those. So the 1-to-1 is definitely going to smoke them. But nevertheless, if you ask me, the 1-to-1 takes the cake in terms of the hypers. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. Remember to hit that sub button and click the bell to ensure that you don't miss out on any future videos. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya. Stay tuned for episode 11.